Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. You can get CME for this episode by clicking on the CME link in the show notes. Today, we welcome back Dennis Hursh. He's a healthcare attorney. He's the founder of Physician Agreements Health Law, regular guest on KevinMD to talk about all things physician contract. Today, his KevinMD article is Very Rarely a Physician Can Ask for Too Much. Dennis, welcome back to the show.
No, thanks. It's good to be here again.
So tell us what your latest article is about.
Well, I've been doing this for 40 years, and for 40 years, I've been harping on physicians to ask for what's appropriate. The way that I do a review is I write a letter on law firm stationery and send it to the physician with the idea the physician will send it to the employer. For 40 years, I've been getting pushback. I don't want to ask for that. I don't want to ask for that. Well, I think we're going too far. You're too many requests. Are you sure they're not going to withdraw it? And I've always told them, no, they never withdraw the offer, which isn't completely true. Once I had an offer withdrawn, but it was for credentialing reasons. It wasn't because we were asking too much. And then just a couple months ago, I actually had an offer withdrawn, and I'm pretty sure I know why. It was a very experienced physician who was being recruited by a private practice. And he insisted on a few things, which generally I don't think would have been a problem. He wanted more. It was a radiology practice. They had a monstrous amount of PTO, but he wanted a couple weeks more. But the biggest thing was that he wanted to be made a partner immediately and not pay anything for it. And I really believe that was the bridge too far. I think you generally get 0% of what you don't ask for. So I encourage you to ask for everything, particularly when I'm doing it. You know, if they're concerned, you can always shrug and say, well, you know, attorneys, and just, you know, blame me, and it's not you really asking. But I think we hit a sore spot with that. And I don't blame the physicians. If you think about it, you've been building a practice your whole professional life. It's a very valuable practice, and you know it. You know, hospitals will come in and give you hundreds of thousands of dollars or maybe millions of dollars for it. I think for somebody to come in that you've interviewed a couple times and has good clinical credentials, for that person to expect to become your partner, it's just too much to ask for. And like I said, I didn't blame them.
So before talking about that specific case, one of the things that you mentioned caught my ear. You said that a lot of physicians, they're a little bit hesitant in terms of asking for a variety of reasons. What do you think are some of those reasons why physicians are a little hesitant to ask for requests in a contract?
I think you want to prove that you're a team player, that, hey, I like you, I'm interested in this position. I don't want you to think that I am greedy. And I think there's a lot of that going. And some people are actually hesitant to even use an attorney, like somehow that shows a lack of trust. I can guarantee you there aren't too many physician employment agreements out there that have been drafted by physicians. So, you know, they got their attorney to protect them. I used to represent a fair number of private practices, and we were never concerned when an attorney reviewed it. We're actually happy because you invested in an attorney. I know you're not juggling 12 offers and seeing what you can get from us. You're obviously interested in this position. But I think a lot of it is they want to show I'm really interested in this, and I don't want to look like I'm greedy, is the impression I get.
So if you're talking to a physician and that physician is a little tentative, what do you say to them to make them feel at better ease?
It's, first of all, I'm not going to ask for anything unreasonable. So I'm not going to say, hey, I want 9 months of paid vacation, because that would be great. I'm not going to say I want more money unless I can justify it. If I will point out, if your compensation's below median, that you should be paid median compensation, but I'm not going to ask for anything unreasonable. So to say, I want you to use reasonable discretion, I don't want to be assigned to locations without my concurrence, I don't think any of that is going to strike the other side as being totally unreasonable. This person is going to be hard to work with. I think they're all reasonable requests. And again, I think you ask, it's very easy. The employer can say no. That we're not changing that. I don't think anybody's going to get up in arms and say, how dare you ask for the
Mhm.
right to choose where you're assigned, with apparently one exception. That's partnership.
So let's talk about this exception. So this was a radiology private practice. The prospective physician wanted to be made partner immediately with zero buy-in. Now, did
Mhm.
this physician run this request by you? And if he did, what did you think about it?
I kind of blame myself for not pushing back harder. I said I've never seen anybody let into a partnership day one. You put yourself in their shoes. They know you interview well, but they don't know, day to day, are they going to be losing staff because you're hard to work with? You're just going to have an abrasive personality. They just don't know you well enough to be a partner. But I didn't push back hard enough, obviously, because, the physician was convinced that they really needed him, and they were going to make the offer anyway. So I kind of blame myself for not saying, don't do this. I tried to talk him out of it. I should have said, no, we shouldn't do that, but I didn't. So
And when you presented this to the private practice's attorney, what was the response? Did he simply
well,
just
they just
approve the offer, or?
yeah, we would draw the offer. They didn't give a reason, but I'm certain I know the reason. I mean, there was nothing unreasonable. There was a few things in there that were a big ask, but again, I want more PTO. No, that's what everybody gets. Nobody's going to say, forget it, we're walking away because you want more PTO. But I'm sure it was the partnership that they just said, no, there's no way.
And for context, what is the normal time frame before one is considered for partner, and what's a typical buy-in for a
It,
similar situation?
It's all over the board. I mean, I've seen 1 year, I've seen 7 years. So it kind of depends on the practice and kind of what they did before. The way I think it works is somebody set up a solo practice. When that person brought in his or her first partner, I think however long it took and whatever they did then, that's going to just carry on and say that's how we do it. So there isn't really a hard and fast rule. I see a lot of partnerships that let the physician in for practically nothing. And I think the idea is you understand when you come in, we're paying you less than median, and you're going to make less than median in 3 years. But at the end of 3 years, you'll be a partner, and we're doing very well here. So I've seen that. I've seen nominal buy-ins, give us $100. And the one I don't like is I've seen buy-ins for fair market value, whatever that means. So it's all across the board, but virtually everybody wants, the least I've ever seen is a year. Because in a year we'll know, if we're burning through MAs because nobody can work with you, we're going to know that in a year.
So it sounds like there's a boundary when it comes to making requests and not overstepping that boundary. And sometimes that boundary, aside from this exception, sometimes can feel a little fuzzy to physicians. So how can a physician know what is reasonable to ask for? Where does that boundary lie?
Well, I think you just look at it. Like, is it unreasonable for me to say, we're agreeing I'm working in these 3 locations and I don't go anyplace else unless I agree? I mean, do you feel that's an unreasonable request? I personally don't. Do you feel that if I'm asking for moonlighting opportunities, that you won't unreasonably withdraw a permission for that? Again, I don't think it is. I think sometimes physicians look at like a 3 or 4 page letter and say, there's all these bullet points, and they say, I'm asking for many things. But I think you have to look at each one and say, is this unreasonable? And as long as what you're asking for doesn't make you say, oh, wow, these guys are suckers if they give me this, then I think it's reasonable.
Now, is there any specific part or aspect of a contract where a physician can perhaps push harder in one area versus another?
Well, I think that's one of the advantages of asking for a lot. If I send you a 4 page letter, you're in a lot better position if you go, this first bullet, we can't do that. Okay. The second bullet, we can't do that. Okay. Third, no. Fourth, no. The fifth bullet, you start saying, wait a minute. This one's important to me. I think you've shown kind of you're a team player. You've given up 4. So I think it's more important, in my mind, it's easier to negotiate if you've got a lot of points because you can give some of them away. The contrast would be if I came to you and said, Kevin, there's three things that's really important to me. Well, if you give me two of those things, I mean, I think in your mind, you met me more than halfway, so I'm kind of being unreasonable if I stick on that. If there were 15 bullet points and I stick on three, I just think it's a whole different dynamic.
How about things like salary and call and PTO? Are there any specific aspects where perhaps an employer would have more flexibility versus others?
No, it's going to depend. A larger organization is going to be more comfortable putting a maximum call. If there's two physicians, even saying 1 to 2, if I get sick or I'm on CME or I'm on vacation, it's going to be just you for a month. So some of it depends on size, but the thing is MGMA has data on all that. So you can go in and say, look, a private practice, the median PTO is this. So this isn't me saying I want more. This isn't, I'm a snowflake, I'm so special, you should give me more. This is just a statistic that the median is this. And I don't see how anybody can argue, with a statistic like that.
Should physicians worry about negotiations becoming too contentious? For instance, if there was a particularly difficult negotiation that was eventually resolved, are there any repercussions to that physicians when they start that job?
I don't think so, because if I've decided during negotiations I don't like you, then we'll withdraw the offer. But the thing is, and it's happened once in 40 years, thousands of contracts. The thing is, it's an important thing. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars at stake. So I don't think anybody says, boy, you're really being unreasonable by, working on what's going to be your career and hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't think most people view that as an unreasonable thing for you to be concerned about.
So, in this particular example that started off this episode, what was the reaction of that particular physician once that offer was withdrawn?
I think, disappointed because, if he'd gotten everything we asked for, it would have been a fabulous thing. I believe he understood. I'm not sure. We didn't speak much after that, but I think his sense was, well, good riddance. If they're not gonna, I felt it was reasonable. If they're not gonna be reasonable, then, then I don't want to work with them either. So I don't think he was crushed. And again, in today's market, it's not like there aren't 100 other people that are anxious to hire you. So it's not like now I'm going to be without work.
And how did that change your perspective going forward? Do you just simply not ask for similar
I,
requests?
I am going to be very much more assertive when I'm talking to physicians now. If I really think it's over the line, I want to make it really clear to them that everything I've asked for is reasonable. I'm not sure that this request is reasonable. And some people say, well, I don't care. I've got a lot of other good job offers. That'd be great if I get it. If not, I'll just keep looking.
We're talking to Dennis Hursh. He's a veteran healthcare attorney. He's the founder of Physician Agreements Health Law. Today's KevinMD article is very rarely a physician can ask for too much. Dennis, as always, let's end with some of your take-home messages to the KevinMD audience.
Well, this was an outlier event. I mean, I think the thing to keep in mind is still you get 0% of what you don't ask for. There's an amazing physician shortage in this country. You are entitled to get a reasonable contract. So you should ask to get a reasonable contract. They're just probably partnership is the bridge too far, and you probably should not ask to become a partner for free. Other than that, get what's reasonable.
Dennis, as always, thank you for coming back on the show and sharing your insight and perspective.
Thanks, Kevin. It was a pleasure.